Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Dare to be Fearless. I'm your host, Alexa Curtis. And today I wanted to introduce a very special guest who I met at the past Be Fearless Summit in New York City. So I have talked quite often about mental health and social media and anxiety over the years, my own struggles with anxiety and depression. And today I've got Amanda Beausoleil. She is the founder of Sira here to talk about her organization and how it helps empower people across the world to not self-harm and, most importantly, get involved with a community that brings to light a lot of the mental health discussions surrounding anxiety, depression, and self-harm. So, Amanda, whenever you're back, we'll let you take it away.
Hi, I'm here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I figured I would do the intro and then just wait for you to get back, so we'll get that out of the way. But I love this organization. I love your work. This topic in particular, self-harm, is not necessarily something and a buzzword that we see as much as we see anxiety and depression. So it'd be great if you could kind of start from the beginning of why you went down this path as a founder.
Yeah, definitely. So I founded Sira, so it stands for Self-Injury Recovery and Awareness. I founded Sira at the end of 2019, and I really had the desire to start my own nonprofit for self-injury because of my own struggles with self-injury. I started engaging in self-injury when I was 10 years old in the form of cutting, and I didn't receive help until I was 23. I'm 32 now and been living a self-injury free life for many years. But when I was 23, I had a horrible cutting episode. I just graduated college. I was living in New York. I just graduated fashion school, and I had realized 13 years had passed of me engaging in this behavior. And I thought to myself, wow, what do the next 13 years look like? I eventually want a family. I want kids. What if, God forbid, my future kids walk in on me and they see me doing this and they pick this up and they think that's the way to handle your emotions? And that was really the moment where the embarrassment of needing help outweighed the fact that I needed help. Growing up, everyone always told me it was a teenage phase and I'd grow out of it. So I never thought to get help for it because I was told I would grow out of it. So I thought, well, why would I try to get help for something that's keeping me alive? Because I did have a lot of suicidal ideation and attempts as a teenager. And so when I had that realization that I couldn't stop on my own at 23, that's when I just started looking for resources. And granted, I had a great network of support. I had a therapist. I've been in therapy since I was 13. I had a psychiatrist. My parents were really helpful and supportive of my mental illness journey because I was diagnosed bipolar when I was 17. But this was the one thing, cutting was the one thing I couldn't kick. And I realized that my doctors weren't well versed in it and they couldn't help me either. So when I had that moment of realizing I needed help, I was just Googling and I couldn't find anything. And I just happened to find one peer support group that happened to be in New York. And it wasn't a nonprofit or anything like that, just a few people that met once a week. And I went and I realized I stereotyped my own tribe, so to speak. I definitely gave in to the stereotype of how the media depicts people who engage in self-injury, even though I knew that wasn't true because I didn't fit that mold. But when I went, I was so shocked by the diversity of the group from people of all walks of life, from people from in their early, late teens to all the way in their 60s and 70s. And it just really shocked me, men and women. And couple years after going to that peer support group, I really wanted to make it an official nonprofit because I realized so many people were emailing us thinking we had the answers when we were really just five people that talked every Saturday. And I decided to leave the fashion industry because I was burnt out at the time. And I was thinking if I could do anything, it would be to create resources for people that engage in self-injury and bridge the gap between people that engage in the behavior and healthcare professionals because there's not a lot of trust there due to a lack of education. And yeah, and help normalize the conversation and lower the stigma. So I moved back home to Texas and built Sira.
Well, can you tell me, and thank you for all of that. It's incredible that you've been able to turn what happened with your own personal experiences with mental health into this business. But I'm very curious, why do you feel like there is such a stigma surrounding mental health? Because in this day and age, so many successful founders have come out and talked about their own experiences with mental health. So it's frustrating that we're still living in a world where this isn't socially acceptable to go through these ups and downs.
Yeah, I think luckily the conversation's getting better and we're being more open about mental health conversations. Granted, there's still a long way to go. I think mental health, I think why anything has stigma, there's fear in it because you don't understand. And especially with mental health, you can't see it like a broken leg. So then everyone's experience, everyone's their episode, so to speak, however they handle their mental illness, it all looks so differently. It's not like a one size fits all. All of our brains are unique. And I think a lot of it comes from just fear and lack of knowledge. And that's the same thing for self injury in particular. It's such a niche sector of mental health. However, so many people engage in self injury. But people don't understand it because it does seem counterintuitive. You know, as a species, it's innate in us to survive. So to see someone physically destroying their body, it confuses people because we are meant to survive. And the irony of that is that the people engage in self-injury to survive. They're not trying to end their lives, which is why the clinical term is non-suicidal self-injury. Granted, there is a high correlation between people that engage in the behavior and people that have suicidal ideation or attempts or completions, but it's not one and the same. But I think people are scared to talk about it, and there is a lot of stigma because of fear and lack of education. I've seen throughout the years, once I talk to people about self-injury or even talk about mental illness, and I'm very open about me being diagnosed as bipolar when I was a teenager. I think it's just learning how to be comfortable in the uncomfortable and getting past that uncomfortability. And then we can all see each other as one. And we realize we're all humans just trying to figure out life the best way we can. And we all have maladaptive coping mechanisms. Some are just more extreme than others, so to speak. But I think it's more so people stigmatize a lot of things because of fear, and unknown and not knowing. And then when we have these conversations and we're all brave enough and keep space to have the conversations, hold space to have the conversations, then we start connecting as humans again. And we realize we're all humans just trying to do our best.
As a founder who is so vocal and honest and raw about mental health, how have you been able to perhaps take some of these experiences and channel them into your business? Because myself included, I deal with very bad anxiety, very bad depression. And people always ask me, how as a founder do you get through this? And I can tell you it's not easy, but I've really learned to take those feelings and throw them into my work and my business. So for you being in the industry, is any part of it triggering? And on top of that, how do you switch the narrative so that you really are able to utilize this and obviously confidently share your message?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think it's all about turning your pain into power. And that's what I've done with Sira. And I don't get triggered. It's actually done the opposite. I believe talking about self-injury as my job and being in part of leading so many peer support groups and just being so involved in the field of non-suicidal self-injury, it actually helped my recovery because I was having to talk, and I do have to talk about it all the time, that it just makes me so comfortable with the behavior. And I know it in so many different levels, from just a person that struggled with it to a person that does it as a career and an expert in the field of NSSI. So I think in the beginning, I probably would have thought it would have triggered me, but it's really done the opposite. It's kept me safe, has kept me in recovery, and it's kept me on my healing journey because I am talking about it all the time. And I, going back to turning your pain into power, that's also just brings me fulfillment, and just like a life of service is really important to me. So I think that's how I get through it. And also when I am having like a bad, mental health period, or a mental illness is, rearing its ugly head, so to speak, I just practice just being incredibly honest with my team. I tell them all the time, like, hey, if you're having a mental health issue, or if your mental illness is, if you're struggling with your mental illness, et cetera, or you just need a break, take a break. Please tell me. I'd rather you say, hey, I'm not feeling well. Like, I need to take a break for a few days or a month, what have you. And I've realized for me, I need to I need to show that as well. So for instance, I had a horrible May. Like it was just very, very personally, like just very a struggling time for me. And I told my team, I was like, I'm going to take a break for a week. If you need me, like text me, but try not to need me too much because I'm not doing well. Like my mental health is struggling and I need to step away. So I found that just being really honest with my team and the people around me, and that's just how I lead my organization. Like they know that I have ups and downs too, and that sometimes I need to take a break for the sake of my sanity.
Explain as well, what exactly were you doing in fashion prior to starting this nonprofit? Because the fashion industry on its own has so many problems, so many people in there who are incredibly underpaid, incredibly underworked. I think that's also an interesting point of how you ended up starting this nonprofit from that.
Yeah, definitely. When I tell people that we're in fashion that I'm in mental health, they all say that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So I've kind of done a little bit of everything in fashion. So I went to fashion business school in New York. I went to LIM, and then I interned at various magazines like Oprah, at Town and Country, WWD, etc. And then I worked at the photo studio at Saks on their editorials and styled for online and worked with their art directors there. And then I went to Tory Burch and managed the runway collections and Vogue.com collections and Tory's personal samples. And then I was also at Calvin Klein doing sales. And I was also at Lily Suzuki, again, doing sales and marketing. And then Coveteur, I was on the brand partnerships team in sales.
Is there anything that you haven't done in fashion? I mean, that is like the most incredible roster. Do you still have communications with people there now? Like, has anyone reached out to you from those brands and said, wow, like look at what you've done. I wish I could get involved because I think a lot of people work in fashion but hate working in fashion.
Yeah, no, I do. Coveteur actually, when I interviewed for them, because I worked for them in 2022 and 2023. When I had my interview, I told them about Sierra. When I was looking to get back into the fashion world, just, had to pay the bills. And that was just the only thing I was qualified in at the time. I told everyone straight up about Sierra because I said, do not hire me if you are not on board with, the nonprofit that I'm running that is incredibly important to me and is my life's work. And so they were so gracious and so supportive. Even when because I give workshops to doctors about self-injury, and sometimes like I would just take off work to give a workshop or something, and they actually let me write about Sira in Coveteur during Mental Health Month. So they were always very supportive. Tori's been really supportive as well. They actually donated a purse for Sierra's last fundraiser in January. So yeah, people have been really supportive for my fashion background. I actually reached out to one of my old colleagues to help me with an event that's coming up later this year. So yeah, I love all my fashion people, and they've been very supportive.
Well, I used to work back in the day in fashion, and your experience is way different than mine. I don't feel like I probably was too young to be in it. So I feel like you probably got way more out of it than I did because I was just like this young, broke, trying to figure it out. And you had like the heavy hitting jobs. I mean, that's super, super cool. On the branded side, because Sierra's a 501c, correct?
Yes, it's a 501(c)(3).
So on the branded side of getting partnerships for a nonprofit or getting fundraising, going from obviously that lucrative fashion industry lifestyle to this, what are strong parts, more things that maybe have surprised you and been a little bit tougher? Because I've also had a nonprofit over the years, and I give people who are in the nonprofit world a uh what's the right word, congratulations, because it's hard to find money in that world.
Yeah, it's it's really hard. You saw my voice just got so much deeper. I was like, yes, I concur. I talk
Uh-huh.
about it with my fellow nonprofit entrepreneur friends. And like thank God I have them because they totally understand the struggles of raising money, whether it's for profit or nonprofit, is hard. It's just, nonprofit also has its uniqueness to it because of the work you're doing and the impact work. It is a struggle. It continues to be a struggle. It will always probably be a struggle. It's just part of the nature of the beast in a sense. But I think it's all about just making sure I've learned that you have to take the right money. There is such thing as bad money. Like not all money is green. And making sure that people writing the checks align with your mission, align with your values, and they are partners in a sense. So what I've taken from fashion, actually, pitching has helped me. I learned a lot of that from the fashion world. So that's been really helpful. Also, just networking, because in fashion, especially with some of my jobs, like I was going out to dinners and events and lunches with, everybody, so many people. And so it really helped with my conversation skills, connecting quickly with people, and making sure that you're doing something that aligns for everybody and you're not just take, but it's mutually beneficial for the greater good, especially for nonprofit world. So yeah, there are a lot of transferable skills I took from fashion to the nonprofit world from a business standpoint, and prospecting and outreaching, and how to throw events too, how to throw fundraisers. And I definitely take my fashion experience, because I've been fortunate to go to so many cool and amazing events, and just seeing like, oh, I liked that thing at that one event I went to, and like putting it into a fundraiser. So there are a lot of things that I took from the fashion world and applied to the nonprofit world.
Interesting. It's a good point too, because a lot of actually, yeah, fashion industry related events and even designers, right, actually do the best who also have nonprofits and stuff behind them. I mean, I've noticed even from my time when I was in fashion that so many of them had nonprofits or projects on the side. And I think obviously with fashion, right, like people really don't always have the necessarily tools to dress well and to be warm in winter, etc. So if you're in the fashion industry and you're able to create that backing behind you, it's quite useful. But now with Sira, so what is a day in your life like? Like how much do you spend uh working with, people in your organization? How do people become involved with the organization? And what is the healing process when somebody starts?
Yeah, so every day for me is a bit different. Usually a lot of meetings, because I'm meeting with a lot of people and working to bring in money so we can reach our goals, so we can build more programs. So it's different. Every day for me is between meetings, new projects, and also talking to my volunteers that are community engagement volunteers that deal with the people more one-on-one than I do. And then also our meetings, because we have 3 meetings a week right now via Zoom, and starting in August, we'll have 6 meetings a week. So also that goes into training host. We have a WhatsApp group of over 160 people, which is a very active chat. So that has to be monitored. I used to monitor it, and that was a lot, to do every aspect of Sierra, from the business side to, talking to everybody one-on-one. It was a lot to take on. So I'm very grateful now I have amazing volunteers that handle that side of things. So it does look very different for me day to day. But definitely I'm always talking to people in Sierra, who are managing various aspects of Sierra, and also making sure that our hosts feel comfortable and trained, and that they're ready to host if it's their first meeting. And as far as the healing process, everybody's process is very different, and there is no timeline for it either. I think it's evergreen. But to get in touch with us, if you're interested to go to a meeting, you email us, and then we will send you a screening survey, or you can just fill out our screening survey on our website. And from there, our team will read it. And if you are good with the screening survey, we just want to make sure that we're a good fit for you and that we can support you to the best of our ability. And once we review it, then we'll send you the link to our Zoom, and then you can attend any meeting you want whenever you want. And then if you want to join our WhatsApp group, you have to be 18 years or older, and you need to attend at least 4 peer support meetings. And then you can join our WhatsApp group. And so I have found that I always say the antidote to this isolating behavior is connection. And so that's why being part of this community is so important. And it's helped so many people. It's helped me, because I just talking to people that understand your struggle, that aren't going to judge you, especially with the topic and a behavior that you're engaging in that is highly stigmatized and judged, it's just such a relief. And you feel less alone, especially since, this isn't a behavior where it's not like drinking when you can, if you want, go to a bar, you can go to a party, you can do it in social settings. Self-injury is not that. It is isolating. You're alone, and you hide it. Most people hide it. So being able to connect with people is the start of the healing process, in my opinion, and what I've seen work. And right now we're working on building videos, like a subscription-based platform, that will be videos around coping skills, and we're building an online recovery course as well. The curriculum was a fusion of people with lived experience like myself, and also a fusion of academia and evidence-based research from Cornell. So yeah, we have a few projects in the mix just to start bringing even more programs and resources to people struggling to help them on their healing journey.
If you're a young person listening and you deal with self-harm, what is the first step? What would you suggest?
I would suggest, if you haven't told anyone yet, talk to someone. However, I would recommend, before you talk to someone, figure out who you want to talk to and why you're choosing them. There's a great template on Cornell's self-injury recovery and resources site. It's called, I think it's SIRR.org, I believe. It's called the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why. And it helps you map out, like, if you're choosing a person, why you chose them, when you want to meet, where you want to do it, where you want to talk. It just helps you, it helps guide you and feel a little bit less nervous, and also making sure you're choosing the right confidant that can hold space for you. So I say that's a great place to start, because again, this behavior is so isolating. So that moment you kind of puncture that isolation is the beginning of it all, in my opinion, just because you do need to start connecting, and connecting with someone in your circle that you trust, is a great way to start. And also, I think journaling is really good. I think our layers. So Sira has its own literature called Layers to Discovery. They're journal prompts, and they really just help guide you to help you find the answers of the why behind your behavior and get to the root of the behavior. So I would recommend, like, our Layers to Discovery, and just journaling that if you're not ready to talk about it yet. Because then at least you're being your own detective in a sense. And I think that's really important with anything, but especially with self-injury, when it can be very complex, and it is complex. So I always tell people, in your healing journey, be your own investigator and get to the root of the why.
Prior to when we started this episode, we had a brief discussion, because now I'm mostly based in London, about the resources in the US for this particular mental health in comparison to the UK. Can you chime in on that? Like, why are there more resources for this in the US or in the UK than in the US?
I'm not sure why there are more resources. And when I say more resources, I'm saying just like a couple more things. It's not like there's just like a plethora of resources overseas. But I've noticed in the UK, they have more, um, they touch on different types of communities facing it. The people that engage in self-injury, their parents as well, and caretakers. There is a app, that's specifically just for parents whose kids are struggling with self-injury. I believe it's called Speak, SPEEK, and they're in the UK. And then Scotland, or I believe it's Scotland. They're the first government to put money behind a self-harm action plan in the world. So I forgot what it's called. It might just be the self-harm action plan, actually. But they focus on they want to make sure everyone of all ages understands what self-harm is. They have education templates, they have courses, and then they have, I believe it's a few weeks of a program for people who are engaging in self-injury to get help, and it's government backed, which I think is amazing. And hopefully one day that won't be a rarity, and it will be the norm for governments around the world to realize, like, this is a huge issue. A lot of people don't realize how many people engage in self-injury, but in the US alone, adolescents, it's like reported that adolescents, up to 25% of adolescents engage in self-injury, report a lifetime um, engagement of self-injury. And some researchers think it's actually more like 30%. But right now it's between 17 and 25%, which is still a huge number. And then for young adults, it's upwards of anywhere from 15 to 23%, really. And then adults, anywhere from 8 to 14%. So the numbers are quite high and they're only rising. So the fact that there aren't many resources here or abroad that much um, is a huge problem. Hopefully, Sira and more organizations can come about to help and support people. But I do think people talk about mental health maybe probably a little bit more overseas. At least I have found the people I've talked to, they're more open to talking about mental health. They have governments that support their mental health more, which is why like places like Scotland, like they do have backing from their government to even create self-harm programs. So I think possibly, if I could guess, the stigma's a little bit lower there, and the government's more open to talking about mental health. But that's just my opinion and what I've seen. But there definitely, I've noticed more resources overseas.
Amanda, you have been a pleasure to speak to, and I am so honored to have had the opportunity to talk to a founder who so openly talks about her journey like this. Where do you see Sira building into? What would you like this company to become?
Yeah, so I would love Sierra to be a one-stop shop for self-injury, meaning we have programs in whether it's coping skills, educational programs, et cetera, for people that engage in the behavior. But we also have support in programs for parents and caretakers, and then also working with educational institutions. We started working with the school district last year of 70,000 kids and helped them create their self-injury protocols. So getting into more schools, helping them build self-injury protocols and also teaching their staff about self-injury so they're better equipped to support their students. And also working with hospitals and inpatient programs as well. So I really see Sierra being a place where no matter what area, whether you're the person struggling, you're the person needing help, or you're the person needing to find help for a friend, or you're the person needing education for your company, being able to come to Sierra and we have something for everyone because we can provide that education and the support of the person struggling all under one organization.
Where can everyone find you on social media as well?
Our handle is SIRA awareness.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for joining the show today. I am so excited to hopefully have you speak at the next Be Fearless event and just truly applaud everything you are doing as a founder. For everyone who tuned into this and wants to follow or find out more about Amanda, head to the show notes and make sure to follow Dare to Be Fearless on social media at Dare to Be Fearless and at Alexa_Curtis. And we'll see you back next week for a new episode of the show.